And call this meeting to order. And roll call, please.
Carr. Daniels.
Here.
Frost.
Here.
Gaylord. Guerra.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Lamson. Here. Lee. Natoli. Peters. Thurna. Terry.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. So with that, we'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. And today we'll have our pledge led by Mr. Cruz.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. And with that, we'll move on to Clerk Announcements for the television announcement, please.
Thank you. This meeting of the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District is cablecast live without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T UVerse cable systems. This meeting is being closed captioned and will be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will be repeated on Saturday, January 26, 2019 at 2 p.m. on Channel 14. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker form located on the table at the back of the chambers and give it to the clerk. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Also, at this time, can you please silence your cell phones until the conclusion of today's meeting?
Thank you for that. With that, we'll move on to special presentations.
And right about now, you're going to act very surprised, right?
Right.
Okay. We do want to take a moment to recognize the changing of the guard. And we want to say on behalf of the district staff, we want to say thank you to outgoing Chair Don Terry. I personally want to say thank you. You're the only chair that I've known on this board, but I do...
and the best one so far, right?
Well, you know, I was going to say, Mr. Guerra, the bar is high, so you got your work cut out for you. But no...
Saying I'm short? Is that, he looks at me when he says it.
I do want to say in all seriousness, I do appreciate, on behalf of the staff, your engagement, your leadership, the fact that you always answer the call. You've been there for us 110%, and I can tell you, I appreciate it, the staff appreciate it. I mean, clearly, the board sets the tone for what we can accomplish as an agency, and having your type of energetic leadership is certainly refreshing for us. So we just want to present a little token of our appreciation. It's a nice little plaque that I hope that will find a special place in your office at City Council.
Should I give it up for that?
You want to take a picture? All right. We have to do social media, of course. Now I know that Mr. Guerra and Mr. Hanson would like to share their perspectives.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Ayala, Dr. Ayala. It's actually been a great learning experience working here with our board member, Donald Terry. I've gotten a chance to work with him when he was on the school board and then also as a council member, but I think the most exciting has been here on the Air District, not only at our work and delegations going to DC on the Air District Board, but more importantly, focusing on how do we really tackle the issues of air quality here in the region. Committed as he is, he's also takes it in stride and is a fun guy. So thank you for your service and also for helping us in this transition time within our new pollution control officer as well, and helping him get on into a good start, and we're already seeing those positive benefits. So here to our retiring chair, Donald Terry.
And as past chair, I just would like to say you've done a phenomenal job. One of the most important things we ever do is to pick a new APCO, and I think you led that process admirably. Alberto has never failed to disappoint. Because we're a regional body, I think you've done a great job trying to knit the region together through our decision-making, through collaboration, and that's not always an easy thing to do, but you've done it really well. So thank you for your leadership, and I'll look forward to moving to a different chair after this so you can occupy this.
Well, thank you, everybody. It's been a real honor the last couple of years. And yeah, I will say that in any elected body's charge, the most important thing to do and kind of the most critical thing that you ever do is to hire an executive. And I will say, and I'll pat up all of ourselves on the back here, that we hired an excellent executive that has wildly exceeded our expectations of what you could do in this position. And considering the environment that we're in, literally, and that's politically and figuratively, right? Not only do we have the issues back in Washington with EPA and the lack thereof, but also that, this organization was really tested this year with the car fire and the camp fire, and the number of people that understood how critical this work is and understood how important it was to check our website every morning to figure out if it was safe for their children to be outside, including my own. So thank you. I will point out, I'm not sure this is as exciting as being on the school board. I know one of my colleagues over here leaned back to remind us that we had some very exciting days over at Sac City Unified. And then I will say, as much as I would love to take all of the credit for hiring Dr. Ayala, you were the chair of the hiring committee. So thank you for all of your work and everyone else's work. And so it'll be my honor to hand off the gavel today to somebody else to run this place. But it's been a great honor. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I do want to also present. I do want to also present two more. It's bittersweet when you work for elected officials such as yourselves, because we are subject to the political winds. And I personally was very sad to see Mr. Cruz go from this board, because Mr. Cruz was one that he was there with us every step of the way, from walking the halls of Congress when we went to cap, to doing time at the Capitol, and he and I spent a lot of hours there when we needed the board to be represented so that we could be more effective arguing for our case for our region. It's one thing for the APCO to be there, it's one thing for the professional staff to be there. It's a very different thing when we have board members speaking on behalf of our priorities, and Mark never failed to answer the call as well, and we're sad to see him go, and we wish him the best. And this is a simple token of our appreciation for what you've done for this board, and what we hope you will continue to do in your new endeavors. If you'd like to say a few words.
Not a politician anymore, but I still have a lot to say. No, it's been a real honor working with this board. As you said earlier, it was a daunting task to replace our APO, and I got to tell you, working with Larry Green was really a wonderful thing. But on top of that, the gentleman we've replaced, I didn't think we could fill those shoes. We've gone beyond that. And Alberto, I hope to see great things coming. I know we will. I'm really proud of this group, and trust me, I'll stay in touch. Paige will do a great job for you as well. And thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And yeah, I will say, honestly, Mark, you're probably probably the hardest working board member that we have, especially when it comes to cap. I do see that there's a couple other directors that had wanted to make some comments.
Thank you, Chair. First, welcome, Paige. Mark has huge shoes to fill. I mean, you have huge shoes to fill for Mark. Sorry, mornings aren't my forte.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah, but Mark, as I told you right before we started the meeting, you've been a phenomenal board member, not just representing your city admirably, but being part of this group, being part of this region on our delegations, as part of the work we've done with LGC. You've been really a champion, and I think It's not always easy to do that, particularly when you're busy and you're commuting here from further away, but you've always been, in my 6 years, one of our best board members. And so it really is an honor to say thank you for what you've done. And like I told you before, don't be a stranger.
Thank you. Director Lee.
So, you're really leaving, huh? Hey, you know, I appreciate sitting next to you for a number of years, and you know, I really appreciate your commitment. And as I told Paige, I'm glad to have a new buddy here that's much better looking than you. So, thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Director Harris.
Mark, I just wanted to say thank you also. You're really a gentleman, and it's been a pleasure to serve with you. I'm going to miss you here. So, yeah, don't be a stranger. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mark. Director Frost.
Mark, I just wanted to say that I've enjoyed working alongside you during your public service, and I think you're a complete professional, and I wish you all the best moving forward, and look forward, hopefully we won't lose connections, but wish you all the best moving forward.
Thank you. Director Natoli.
Yes. Well, Mark, I know I'll be seeing you around town, and you're a great guy, and certainly appreciated your leadership with colleague Paige and others on the City Council. And I know you take a great interest certainly in serving people, and have provided a good deal of leadership there, but certainly here as well, and appreciate your attention to detail. And I know you've been a good emissary going to Washington on a number of occasions and such. And again, I consider you a good friend, and I wish you well. And I know that great things lie ahead for you. So anyway, congratulations. Thanks a lot for your good efforts.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair?
Thank you. Well, when I first met Director Cruz, he said, "Hello, I'm Mark Cruz," and I was like, "Wow, he's a really tall Latino." And then he's like, "Oh, it's Cruz with the WS, not a Z." Oh, okay. Yeah. And but Mark has always been, a real jovial guy. I've always appreciated his guidance when I first came on the board. Him and I both grew up and have history in rural areas and rural history, and I think the perspective he's brought onto this board has been critical, because as we know that this region, this district represents the air quality impacts to a region, and both metropolitan and rural regions are not independent of each other. We interact, and we are different employment centers, and Mark, I think, has had that global perspective of how each one of those have that symbiotic relationship. And Mark, I appreciate your insight on that and giving me that guidance.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mark. So with that, we'll move on to...
One more.
Oh, do we have one more? Okay.
Yes. Mr. Fox is not here, and we certainly welcome Director Daniels back. We're glad to have you here. Looking forward to re-engaging with you. We had Director Fox with us for a short time, but we also want to recognize him. And he's not here with us, and we're going to reach out and make contact with him because. Like I did with Director Paige Lamson, we do an initial meet and greet, a little bit of onboarding, if you will, and Director Fox was fairly into what we were up to, because you may recall, he had a number of very interesting and meaningful questions during board proceedings, and gave us some really good homework that we had to go and look up and send back to the board. He understood what it meant to get to cleaner technology. He was very interested in the heavy-duty sector. Apparently, he's got connections or colleagues in terms of understanding the state and the local rules. So I appreciated that from him, that he really came to the board and really fulfilled his role as an air district director. So we just wanted to say that about him, and like I said, we have a nice plaque for him that we will be presenting soon. So.
No. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the consent calendar item, or consent calendar. Is there anything anybody wants to discuss or poll? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move consent calendar.
I have a motion by Guerra. Do I have a second? I have a second by Hanson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Abstentions? Okay. Item carries.
Chair Terry, before we move on, we have some public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. We finished the consent calendar. Let's go back because I'm not paying attention today. Luckily, we have a clerk that is. With that, we'll go to public comment. I believe we
We
have a
have
couple.
two gentlemen here. I have Mr. Bird Loeffler and Mark Dorfer. I'm sorry, and I butchered your guys' names. I apologize. From PEM Motion, who'd like to give a public
Okay,
comment.
thank you. And I think Vice Chair Guerra wanted to make some comments.
Yeah, I will, and I'd like to introduce both Mark and Bert to the podium here. If you gentlemen could come. They were gracious to host Director Cerna and myself when we went to Germany, Aachen, Germany. Did I print? And Jaime as well. Limas here from our district staff. Their welcome to Germany was no joke. They put us to work. I mean, it was 4 straight days of learning about the future of mobility and the critical part about not just why air quality is and addressing air quality is important, but the importance of jobs, economy, and how to be able to make sure that that you're creating a new economy in a place that had lost a lot of manufacturing jobs at Aachen. And I think Mark will tell an interesting story about their experience. I think their presentation and their visit here today is they want to look at the prosperity that happened in Aachen, Germany, and bring that to Sacramento, and how we, as a greater region, and as we saw there, as a greater Sacramento region, can benefit from looking at the technology and the focus of not only good air quality, but addressing the future challenges of mobility. So with that, it's my honor to welcome and both Bert and Mark here from PEM Motion, which I'm not going to try to rename the acronym, but I'll let you guys do that. And I apologize if I butchered your last names too last time. So yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Guerra. Mark Dorfer from PEM Motion in Germany, Aachen. And my colleague.
Actually, my name is, in Germany, my name is pronounced Bernd, but I always say Bernd. And if I order a Starbucks coffee here, then I say I'm Ben, because then they don't mix that up. Yeah, I'm also very excited to be here. And you've probably heard about the feasibility study that we are carrying out together with SMART. And one thing that we are trying to do within this study is to get a better understanding of what you really need in this region. And there are so many different parties involved in that study. So you have, of course, the Air Quality Board, then you have SMART, then you have the universities, and GSAC and so on. So, and it is a big challenge to get everybody on board and to make a common vision out of it. But I think because there are so many different parties involved, it really can make a difference and an impact onto this region. Yeah.
Yeah, so what we're doing on the feasibility study is actually, after you guys came to Germany and had a look at what we've created there, just to give you a short background on that is, in Germany we've set up a so-called ramp-up factory, which focuses on reducing time to market for innovative ideas based in the new mobility sector or future mobility sector. When we talk about future mobility, it's not just the e-mobility, which is, of course is a huge part of this, but it's also connective mobility, it's shared mobility, it's last mile solutions, zero emission solutions, and we've had a huge demand actually by clean tech startups, clean tech companies coming into our facility to actually access state-of-the-art machinery, state-of-the-art research, because we work very closely together with the university. Best example of this is I am from the PEM Motion business unit. My colleague Bernd here, he's from the PEM laboratory at the university in Aachen. So we work on all projects hand in hand. So this actually brings academic research and industry projects together. And I think there's a huge opportunity for this region to not copy this model from Aachen, but to take best practice evaluate the situation right here, adapt it, and move forward in a California Mobility Center, as it will be named. I heard yesterday. I think it's the fourth name or fifth name now, so maybe it'll change again. But yeah, we had a very nice event yesterday at the Sac State at the Alumni Center, organized by GSAC. And I had the honor to join the panel discussion together with Dr. Ayala and also Supervisor Cerner. And I think what we learned yesterday is that we can collaborate on a lot of things, and maybe bringing entities that don't work together on a daily basis, such as the universities right here, UC Davis, Sac State, that we can bring them together following one goal, one vision with this Future Mobility Center or the California Mobility Center, and making an impact not only on technology, but making an impact on the region, on the economy here. We commented on this yesterday. Aachen has experienced a huge development in their demographics of the city through the mobility center. When we were studying back in Aachen, we wanted to leave Aachen as soon as possible. We wanted to get our degree done. It's a highly recommended or highly cited university. And then we wanted to get out of the place, to be honest, yeah? We wanted to go to the big OEMs, you wanted to go to the big consultancies, you wanted to go to the big cities, leave Aachen. This has changed completely. Like nearly 80% of the guys I study with are still in Aachen due to startups that came to our ramp-up factory and that actually managed to become OEMs at this point. I can give you some examples on that if you want to pick my brain after. That actually managed to become OEMs and are really not only keeping the talent within Aachen, but they are drawing in talent from all over Germany. So now we have PhD candidates coming from Munich, from Hamburg, from the United States to come to Aachen and work on future mobility and clean tech. And I think that is a great opportunity for the city of Sacramento. And we want to show this in a feasibility study. And as I said yesterday, I think at the beginning, the feasibility study was heading to a yes or no question. I think from tomorrow on, it's going to be a how, who, and what question. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mark. And I don't know, Dr. Ayala, if you'd like to make some comments, because I think this is more than just a city of Sacramento issue. It's a greater regional issue for what we do for our economy and, of course, air quality.
Yeah, and thank you, Director Guerra. And what I'll say is just maybe to put it in broader context for you all, the reason we're interested in this is twofold. Obviously, transportation is the largest source of air and climate pollution. So you're going to hear us talk about strategies to reduce the impact that transportation has on our environment and planet, and that is why anything that has to do with future mobility is going to be of interest to this board. And the second thing, obviously, we are in the business of environmental policy, right? And one of the questions that we want to explore and interact with the PEM group and everybody else that is going to be part of that is to explore the right alignment of local, state, and hopefully eventually federal policies to get this type of development for this future mobility that we know is coming. So over the next months or so later this year, I'm sure you're going to hear back from us on this issue, and we'll keep you posted in terms of how the PEM project develops. But thank you, and thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. So with that, we have dispensed with with the consent calendar, and we'll move on to item 7, which is our funding strategy and budget amendment.
The public comment we just had is the perfect segue, because I think you all get by now that there's a lot of great things happening in the region, and I'm certainly one that believes that we haven't realized our full potential in terms of not only advancing on our air quality and climate goals, but most importantly, do it in a way that helps the region economically, socially, culturally. But for us to be able to do the great things that we want to do, such as PEM, we need to have a healthy financial status. And that's what this budget presentation is about. As you have heard before, and what we're bringing you today is the same presentation that we already shared twice with your budget subcommittee. And they recommended to us, they advised that we bring to the full board a current state of where we are in terms of our budget and fiscal health. The argument we're going to make again is that we need to have a healthy, firm footing in terms of our finances so that we can then go and do the great things that we are thinking about doing, like PEM, like some of the other regional strategies that we've been talking about. This is no news to you, right? I mean, local agencies continue to struggle as cost of doing business is rising, and if we don't get in front of the issue and bring in new funding sources, we get behind. So what we're going to do today is two things. This is mostly an informational item. We do need you to take action because we need to make some administrative adjustments to reclassify some of our vacancies in a way that will allow us to bring some very needed resources in the near term. Currently, the way that the classifications are defined, and we'll get into that in a minute, doesn't allow us the flexibility that we need. But most of the presentation that has to do with our fiscal condition is information only. Later in the year, obviously, we will bring you our annual budget, like we do every year, and obviously, we're going to bring you back some updates on what we're going to talk about today. This is about district priorities. We leaned out as much as we could. A year ago, we were before you, and we said, we have some budget gaps that we don't fully understand. We need to make sure that we have our financial systems in place so that we can understand, the in and out of expenses and revenues. At the same time, we worked through the divisions and really examined our priorities. What is the highest priority in the agency, and what are the things that are perhaps good things to do, but don't rise to the level of priority? We've done that, and we leaned out. And what we did is we said, we're going to hit pause, time out. We're going to institute a hiring freeze. We're going to give ourselves some breathing room to really have a chance to work internally to understand these budget issues. We came up with a very robust forecasting model that takes into consideration the best information we have today, and that's why we're able to come to you today and talk very specifically about the gap in the funding situation for the agency in terms of the revenues and the expenses. We want to talk about not only our challenges, but as I said in my opening statement, the opportunities, right? Because by now, you understand that one of the things that we're trying to do is be better positioned to attract some of the state investments, the huge state investments that the cap and trade funding or program is allowing for. We haven't done historically as well as we think we should, but as you all know, to put money to work takes money. You got to have the resources to make the investments that we're making in your communities, with your businesses, your constituents. Because most of what we do as an air district is put in place these very important and very successful incentive programs. These are basically going out to folks in the community, businesses that are making a living in our region, and we're trying to help them with public funding to say, you got to get cleaner than required, right? Yes, you got to meet all the rules and regulation, but there's money available right now to go even beyond. And obviously, the ultimate is to get to zero, which we understand is still very expensive, but it's still a goal. We do have some proposals for you to consider. Again, these are just informational items. We're going to come back to you with more information. What I'm looking to get from the board today is a thumbs up. I need to make sure that, like the Budget Committee supported the proposal, I want to make sure that you're comfortable that we're going to go in this direction. If you do so, then we'll come back with more specific details for each of these strategies. And obviously, the staffing plan is what I alluded to earlier in terms of the adjustments. As an air quality agency, a little agency that can, we play a very important role in the region, because meeting the ambient air quality standards is a legally binding federal requirement. And there are huge consequences if we don't get there. And the consequences are not with us. The consequences can be with agencies like SACOG, because all the huge federal transportation investment is predicated on something that those of you on the SACOG board have heard about, conformity budgets. That means we, as an agency, have a role to determine how much pollution our region can actually take and still be making progress towards meeting the standards. And if we get off track, we risk the funding allocations. That's why what we do is so important. And we've done an examination of our core programs, and we pull back as much as we can. And we were willing to take a risk because it was only a temporary risk. We hit pause, we wanted some time. We cannot function as an agency taking on this risk. And the risks that I'm talking about are very practical in nature. There are things that we're expected to do to meet the federal requirements at our monitoring network. We have to do things to enforce our rules, because the best rule and regulation in the world without a strong enforcement component is worth nothing more than the paper it's written on. So what we've done is work internally and really examine our core priorities and really, determine and define what the baseline is for us. And the baseline that is necessary for an agency like ours is not being supported by our current budget situation. That's why we're coming back to you and saying we need to think of a solution. There's also the fact that environmental protection is not a static field, right? We're getting additional mandates from the state. You've heard me talk about AB 617 a lot. I hope that the word is getting out, because we are now out in the community talking about community air protection, which is a huge new opportunity for us. But it also comes with a huge impact on all air districts, not only us. So that is one of the key areas that I want to impress upon you, that, as I said before, we need money to put money to work. And AB 617 is one of those where it's a big opportunity. We're really excited about the potential to bring new investment to protect our community, those that had been disproportionately impacted the most by air pollution, but we need to have the resources internally to be able to put those projects in place. We're going to continue to fight to try to attract more cap and trade investment, not only through our agency, but also to help our sister agencies like SHRA with the Transformative Climate Communities Grant, and anything that SACO can do to attract some of the cap and trade funding that is supposed to support the sustainable community strategies. So I think the role we play is much broader than just the narrowly defined low carbon transportation, clean air technology investments. I think we have a role to play in the broader regional approach. We also need to think in terms of just a very basic infrastructure for our building and our operations, right? I mean, eventually we're gonna have to replace a roof in our building, and the windows and all those things that we all have to worry about. At the current time, we don't have a rainy day fund, if you will, to be able to attack some of those improvements that are coming. So that is part of the budget solution that we want to bring to you. And then the last and final, and probably the most important, is we really do want to be an agency that you want to work for. And we want to retain talent, we want to energize talent, we want to attract more talent. At the current time is a very anxious time for our staff, because they know that we have these funding gaps. And it keeps me up at night, because I don't want the staff worrying about these things. They need to be focusing on what they know best, protecting public health by fulfilling the mission for air quality and climate protection that we have. And for us to be able to get to that point, we do need to have a conversation about some of these very difficult solutions that we need to contemplate. Again, in terms of the budget and the assumptions that we're putting into the model, again, we need to get to a staffing level, not where we are right now, but where we can bring in additional resources to fulfill all the priorities. Like I said, and you know this better than I do, COLAs, health, pension, all those costs are rising, and the agency is just not able to keep up with those costs. And like as local elected officials, I mean, we have very little control over that. We just have to plan for and react to it. Again, the same thing, pension liabilities, right? I mean, this is a problem, not just us and your jurisdictions, the state as a whole, but it's something that we want to tackle. I think we do want to consider. We want to have the conversation as a board in terms of, we got to start planning for that, because we want to be able to fulfill that commitment, that responsibility we have. I talked about the building. One of the questions that we have to examine is, an agency like us, with the type of operation and budget, what is the minimum reserve? What is the funding reserve that is reasonable? And Jamil Mullins, who's our admin chief, did a great job with her staff and really explore best practices, right? For an agency like us, what is the minimum? And we determined that 120-day reserve is really where we should be at, which just happens to be where we are today. So our goal is to make sure that we don't drop below that level. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And, we talked about critical programs. One of the most important programs is the Check Before You Burn program that you help us tremendously with, and we thank you for that. But we don't have a direct funding source for that, right? So can we let it go? Well, sure, but then we're going to risk attainment. And as I explained to you, there are going to be consequences outside of our jurisdiction if we don't make attainment. There are some encouraging options that we're looking at in terms of how do we adjust the revenue sources that we have. I think we can build a good argument to make those adjustments. For example, we get a DMV fee as part of our funding strategy, and those DMV's fees haven't been adjusted for years. So they're lagging behind the typical adjustments that you would see in some of those fees. So some of those decisions are the things that we want to bring back to you. Again, I talked about the new state mandates and AB 617. 617 is a great program, and the state is providing some support for air districts to implement, but it's not fully covered. So the expectation from the folks at the Capitol is that local agencies are going to step up and meet the state halfway. And then the final point, incentive programs. Like I said, we are able to bring investments to the region, but we need to have the resources to develop and put those projects in place. So here is the scenario that we're facing. This is the gap and the balance and the fund balance in our budget. If you look at the numbers, we're giving you the numbers projection. Multi-year projection, a forecast, fiscal year. The use of reserve is basically, we have our reserve and we're having to tap into it to fulfill the operational needs of the agencies, right? And the point that you see on the first row is, if we don't do anything about it and create new funding strategies, we're going to exhaust those reserves. That's pretty intuitive. And you can see on the next row how the fund balance is projected to essentially go into the red in a few years if we don't take action, right? And obviously we're not gonna let that happen, and that's why we're here. We wanted to not just kick the can down the road, but we really want to get in front of this issue. In terms of the positions, the budget that you approved last year has allowed us to have 98 full-time equivalent positions. We are operating at about 87 today, simply because, again, we said, time out, let's take a breather, let's put a hiring freeze so that we can give ourselves a little bit of breathing room to try to examine and explore some of these issues. So what we want to do to fulfill the new requirements, as well as bring back to the baseline the level of effort that is needed for our core programs, is we want the same approval that we got from the budget subcommittee from the board, and that is we want to proceed with some, I'm going to call temporary hires, right? We need to bring you some long-term solutions for our budget before we can hire permanent positions, but in the meantime, we do want the ability to hire on what I'm going to call a limited term, right? We are one of 6 different districts that is already implementing new requirements like AB 617, and we're the last to actually bring new resources. Everybody's been ahead of us. Why? Because we know that we need to do a lot more work, and we need your help to make some of the administrative adjustments to give us the flexibility. And like I said, we do need to restore some of those vacancies that we sort of put on pause because we are risking not fulfilling our mission. Challenges and opportunities. There is definitely uncertainty on the funding that is going to be coming from the state, because unfortunately some of the biggest programs, there is no continuous appropriation for them. And that is something that we're going to lobby hard on this year, but your your guess is as good as mine in terms of whether we're going to succeed. So that means we're going to be in this cycle on a yearly basis, right? Trying to understand how the new mandates are met with diminishing resources. But I don't want to leave you with a negative point on this, because again, these new mandates are very good for our mission. We are trying to be smarter and more strategic about protecting communities that have needed it the most. So this is the kind of thing that, in the future, if you're in their district, this is where it's at. So I want to make sure that I don't leave you with just a negative that the state is just dumping on us. It's not that at all. And because it's going to be a yearly budget allocation, it's going to be very dynamic and difficult to predict. I mean, the grants are going to come, but we don't know if, the 250 million that were allocated last year, which showed up in the state budget this year, are going to be the same next year and the year after. We have a new administration, so you can bet we're going to be in the horseshoe at the Capitol making our case. But we're going to need your help. We're going to need one of you to be as active as Mr. Cruz had been in the past, walking the halls of the Capitol. And then again, the administrative aspect of the volatile health and pension costs. So we are in a time where we are competing for limited resources, and we want to get engaged with you so we can get your direction and wisdom in terms of, how do you see us proceeding? Because, again, I think I'm saying the obvious. To be able to fulfill our mandate, we need resources that this agency has not gotten for many years. So it's time for us to have the hard conversation. So what are the solutions that we want to put before you? This is probably the most important slide. We looked wide and vast and talked to other districts and looked internally at some of the options that we have, and we determined that this is probably a very reasonable combination, a portfolio approach, where we want to look at different options in terms of funding solutions. I can tell you right away, they're not as extreme as some other districts, and I can share that with you. At the same time, they do get us to where we need to be. One of the key strategies from my standpoint is Measure A+, and obviously some of you have some key roles in that. You know better than I do in terms of the chances politically, whether that's going to go or not. What I see on the ground when Ms. Mullins and I get involved with STA and the policy advisory group that is already formed and going is very encouraging to me. Clearly, to me, the fact that one of the guiding principles for the measure is air quality suggests to me that we need to be at the table to have a conversation about, when the expenditure plan is developed, what is the fraction of the expenditure plan that should be coming to the air district. So that's one of the things that we want to explore. And again, I'm looking for, that's a good idea, or if there's a fatal flaw that you see, we want to hear that today. The current health and safety code allows us to have as in our district something called a per capita fee. And that is a per capita fee that is imposed on the jurisdictions on this board that you represent. And it allows us to do our job as the protectors of public health through clean air and low carbon solutions. We have not taken advantage of that fee. Not too many air districts have, for the obvious reason. Some have. Placer Air District to our east has taken the position. This is one of their funding strategies, and this is one thing that we would like to explore. The strategies that are highlighted in green are things that are under your control. If we can give you a convincing argument that this is a good thing to do, you have the authority to vote it in, and we can make it happen. The other ones are things that we are going to focus on, but they are going to require us to work in concert with others, like Measure A+, right? So that's a distinction here. And what we've given you is simply a scenario, a bounding scenario in terms of the low and the high, right? These are not hard numbers. These are first-order estimates. We've done our homework, but we need, basically what we're looking for today is a signal, yeah, this makes sense. Then we'll go back this year and do our homework and do a deeper dive on each one of these strategies so that we can bring you the detail. The next two are stationary indirect source fees and full recovery for our permitting fees. Those are internal programs. Again, those are the bread and butter of what we do as an air district. one of our major funding streams. Some of those permits haven't been updated in terms of the fees. And again, I totally get that this is going to be an impact on businesses. But I think the question for all of us is, do we want a healthy air district that can really, push the envelope as we're trying to do, or do we not want to be that air district that can really make things happen for the region? This is an investment. That's the way I see it. I talked a little bit about the DMV. Again, the difficulty with the DMV as I see it is that, again, it's not completely under our control. And one of the legislative questions that we're going to ask is, should we have a regional adjustment to the DMV fees that really brings it up to the current cost of doing business? That's one option. But obviously, it's a statewide measure. You can bet that if we go down this path, other districts are going to have opinions about where to go with this. And then the final strategy is just really this issue of folks at the Capitol that make decisions on funding for air quality measures. In their mind, they want 100% of the funding to go to projects, right, to benefit the community. But again, it takes money to put money to work. And the administrative fraction that we get with our incentive program, 6.25%, doesn't do that. So there's a gap that we somehow are expected to fill. And one of the strategies is we're going to try to change that fraction so that we can just better recover the cost of putting programs in place. So the table and everything I said is illustrated here in graphical form. Right? I mean, the blue line is basically the reserve, and you can see if we do nothing at the current staffing that you've approved for 98 FTEs and the operations, you can see what happens to our reserve. We're trying to prevent that. The yellow line is the low scenario, which is useful but doesn't quite get us there, and the purple line obviously is the high. If everything turns out the way that we would like to see it, the ideal scenario, that is the trend. And again, the target is to maintain our reserve at the current $10 million level that it currently sits at. So that's the challenge we have before us. Now here's the administrative adjustment that we do need you to take action on, and that is we need to turn our positions to provisional appointments so that we can bring on new resources that were needed yesterday so that we can do our job. And again, doing it in a provisional fashion will allow us to work with you to generate these new funding solutions. And this was a point that the budget subcommittee was adamant about. And we agree, right? I mean, we don't want to get into an irresponsible situation where we're just adding resources when we haven't put a plan in place together. So what we need to do is make some adjustments in terms of taking some funded positions so they become unfunded, so that it'll give us a flexibility to hire on a provisional basis. I know I'm not doing as good a job as I should here, and Ms. Moens is here to explain to you in more detail in terms of what this administrative adjustment means. But basically for me is, we are the last district to actually bring resources on board. That tells me something, that we have to make some adjustment. We have some red tape that is getting in the way. I mean, let me just say that. In terms of what we mean by those staffing positions, you can see here how the numbers shake out. Today, the approved FTEs are 98, and we have 5 unfunded positions for the total you see there. What we want to do is unfund some of those and create these provisional appointments so that we can bring in resources to do on a limited term basis, I'm going to say, to help us fulfill the new requirements. But again, these positions are predicated on the funding solutions, right? I mean, we're not being irresponsible in terms of just bringing people on. We are going to be working on the funding solutions at the same time as we bring in the new resources. Because frankly, if we don't have the resources, we're not going to be able to fulfill the expectations that have been put on us. So, we need your feedback. We do need a thumbs up that this is a good plan, this is sensible. If you agree, we'll bring you back more detail. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions. We recognize some of these decisions are going to be difficult. So we don't take it lightly that we're asking you to consider and to work with us on these difficult positions. But I hope that we have sensitized you to the fact that this is really what is needed if we want to be the region and the air district that I think we all agree we want to be. we want to commit to this path forward so that we can go and do our homework and then bring you one by one some of these strategies and give you an update in terms of, do they materialize the way that we expect them at this point? And then, as I said, you do have a resolution to vote on just to simply allow us for the administrative adjustment on the classification of the vacancies so that we can move forward. So let me stop there and
Thank you.
let's have questions.
So we'll take questions in a sec. I just want to thank staff and everybody. It's been a long few months as we've kind of gotten our arms around this. I know that the Budget Committee, for those new members that are here, the Budget Committee's been working on this for probably 3 to 4 months, looking at revenue options and kind of where we are today. So they're not easy choices before us, but they are necessary choices. So with that, I will open it up to Director Natoli.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank Alberto and certainly our staff for their work up on this, and being a member of the committee, certainly I've had a chance to, with a number of colleagues on this board, to with staff to delve into some of these. I want to just point out, because the chart with the potential funding strategies, obviously that's the look ahead that would obviously, as Alberto's pointed out, get us to a different financial picture, obviously with the staffing that would support district programs and some of the efforts, both core as well as anticipated. I did want to just, for a moment though, because I think it merits at least for today's consideration, and again, you would bring this back because this going forward, it gives the authorization for the positions, but it also has the presumptions here that would require further board decisions. And certainly, fully understand, not only the desire, but obviously some of the pointed to need relative to, ongoing support for the district and kind of this local match. I kind of kidded when you were going through the 617 is that, the assumption in the capital is made that, we're going to, be in. Yeah, we're in, but the folks didn't really ask us about how much we're going to be in for and how we were going to fund that. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But in particular, I wanted just on the per capita fee, I need to point this out because, again, each jurisdiction that's a member of this body obviously would have to consider it at their level, even though this board could take the action, I guess, to impose that. But for the County of Sacramento, it's an order of magnitude at the dollar level, about $700,000. That's going to be general fund dollars, and at the $3, it'd be $1.5 million a year. May not sound like a lot, but I would tell you that we talk about unfunded mandates. That one of the critical pieces that we're facing is unfunded mandates and the strain of having to come to grips with the medical costs in the jails. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars, a lot of that general fund and or money that has discretion for health services for the broader population in Sacramento County, which reflects all of our jurisdictions. And so, it may not sound like in a large budget, $700,000 annually or $1.5 million, but those are general fund dollars. They're not something that we're going to have, go out and raise money some other way. And like, our brethren here, we depend upon, certainly property tax and sales tax and some other funds that come down directly for health and human services and other things that the counties are responsible for. So I want to put that forward because, again, that would be into the mix. And again, all 5 supervisors sit on this body, but that's a decision that we're going to have to make about, dollars that are pretty scarce as it relates to general fund and things that, compete. And I mentioned jail medical as being probably one of those biggest holes that we're going to have to figure out a way to, on an ongoing basis, millions and millions of dollars a year to fill that hole. The other thing I just wanted to point out, and it goes to the stationary and other, and certainly the full cost recovery, and we had some discussion at the committee, and I think it certainly merits, at least for purposes of as we think about this, is that one of those is the asbestos rule, and it now currently reflects, I think, on 4 units or more and or commercial properties. This would go to individual homes and would have certainly impact in recovering those costs on individual homeowners potentially. And, I think having some further understanding, Alberto, as we talked about in the committee, about what that might mean in a typical situation, and maybe there's no such thing, because depending upon the age of the house and what components are in there that would require oversight by this district. But this would be a new a foray because we would take it to the individual home, and every home would require under building permits in any of our jurisdictions to then comply, and there are costs associated with doing that. Obviously, there are environmental protections that could come with that as well, so I understand the offset there. But I wanted to raise that because, that, again, that may look as something as simple as just extending that to all developed properties with buildings and structures that would be under this umbrella, but it will have a transfer of costs that will be borne by a segment of the population, homeowners, others now that aren't. And secondly, though, there will obviously be some health offset benefits for disposal materials and tracking that. So I wanted to point those things out because I think they're important and they're embedded in here. And if I haven't reflected that correctly, Alberto, you certainly correct me, but that was my understanding, kind of the takeaway from the committee discussion. And I guess my question is then to all that is, so with the action that's being asked for today, we make these assumptions, and so is it then that staff is going to assume that we buy into these, to these strategies, and if so, then it may, ask for a little broader discussion here. I know the positions, we can do that on an annual basis. We're still, we're not in financial peril yet. Obviously, the trend is what you pointed out. So I guess I want to understand what you're seeking here today.
So I think your line of questioning is a perfect example of the fact that we need to come back to you and give you all the detail, right? I didn't get into any of this detail, and Supervisor Natoli has the benefit of being part of the budget subcommittee, so he's heard this a couple of times already. But precisely to your point, we understand that we are going to come back and each one of these is going to be more fully developed and give you the opportunity to weigh in the pros and the cons, right? All we're asking you for today is, one, do you think that this is a sensible path forward? You're not committing to anything because you're not voting on anything. We need to bring you back that. But what I don't want to do is, again, spend a whole bunch of staff resources. We do our homework when we know that this is going to be DOA relative to where you would like us to see. That's all we're asking for. We understand we don't have the detail. We need to bring you back the detail. But again, I don't want to spend the resources if you think, you know what, this is never going to go. So that's what I'm trying to get from you. It's a sense as to, did we explain to you clearly the challenges? Have we proposed to you a sensible solution to explore further and allow us to come back later this year with each one of these more fully developed with all the details so that then you can challenge us with your questions and your sensitivities? I completely agree with your points, right? And I think, that's why you get paid the big bucks as an elected official, right? Because you got to make those tough decisions. You want an air district like what we are proposing to you, or do you want a skeleton of what we do? And are we willing to take the consequences?
Good, thanks.
With that, Director Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too am on this famous committee of the Budget and Personnel issues with Donald Natoli and Donald Terry and Eric and Sue Frost, and we've been working on this for a while, but some of the issues I just want to recap for the board. We knew kind of as we made the transition to our new APCO that there was a lot of movement in the budget. We made some strategic investments in things that Jamil led. I think that helped us innovate in some of our processes, but you were very clear when you came in, you wanted to staunch the flow of reserves out the door, and I think you made a very difficult decision for the organization to freeze positions and to do all that, and I think that was prudent. But given all of the new burdens, the new opportunities, and the need to reposition ourselves, I think this is very smart to give you the authority to change the funded positions and to rebuild some parts of the organization that really are shorthanded right now. As we go through the funding scenarios, obviously that really isn't so much a debate for today as an information piece, but I do think it's going to be a big challenge to our board to figure out how we continue this mission that we've been given by the state, federal governments, but also by our own jurisdictions. We've had a lot of progress made in our mobile and stationary sources, but given things like we saw with the campfire, where some things may be out of our control, and how do we really address that proactively? How do we also begin to extend into some of the deeper parts of emissions challenges that are more complicated and frankly more difficult. The money that we're talking about investing really comes back to our jurisdictions through incentives to our businesses and all that stuff. And I don't want to look at it statically as simply a one-way flow, because a lot of this actually doesn't just go to funding our staff. It really goes back into working with people who are emitting to get them in a place where they're a better part of the community and less impactful on our community's air and fulfills our public health mission. So these are really important conversations. I think they're hard conversations, but they're absolutely what this board is here to do. And I look forward to working through this with you and with my colleagues up here, because what we decide on this will set the future of this district for the next 5 or 10 years. And so as much as hiring Alberto was a critical decision we've made, setting the budget is the second most important thing we do. And we do that every year. And this is an opportunity to really fulfill the mission of the organization and do well for the community. So thank you for all of the hard work. Thank you to the members of the committee. And I look forward to those debates.
I want to thank you, Director Hansen, for pointing out the benefit of becoming the healthy agency we want to be. And I don't know if we're going to have time to get to the APCO report, which is fine. You have it in your packet. I know some of you might have time constraints, but what we try to do in the APCO report is to really highlight for you some of the nuggets of really important projects and things that we as an air district are getting into. And one of the things that you'll find in the report is precisely the need for better regional coordination to respond to very unfortunate, serious air pollution events like the Camp Fire impacts that we all saw, right? We know we need better coordination. We know we need a better response plan. We know we need to get our act together. There was a lot of confusion. And it is a public health and air quality issue. So if the air district doesn't do it, who's going to do it, right? That's at the core of what we want to do. And that's why we need the resources. I often share with staff that we want to be the agency, and I hope that we get your help. And the fact that we're coordinating regionally on so many different efforts, we want to be the agency that the region cannot afford not to afford us. That's really our goal, right? Because, again, you were very clear when we had the discussion about me coming here. You didn't want the status quo because we know that we have huge challenges. And we want to step up to the challenge, but we need the funding and the resources to be able to meet those challenges.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to thank you, Alberto. I think this is exactly why I think the vote of confidence to bring you here was the right vote. Because this is a tough discussion. I think it would have been easy to continue to kick the can down the road again and to actually start focusing on, okay, if we're going to actually be a successful organization and not even just all the above and beyond, just even the status quo, we have to be a healthy organization. And for me, I want to be supportive of giving you the direction for your staff to continue to work on getting more of this data so that we can make the right choice in June. I don't want to have this conversation in June. I want to make sure that we're saying, look, we have to know all the tough decisions and the right information now. For my preference, I think looking at the things that we can control should be on a higher priority for your staff. You get to manage, I think, your staff better, but I think that would be my interest, and as well as directing our contract lobbyists and our advocacy team on the incentive administration piece to make sure that as the budget is being produced in the legislature and whatnot, the conversations about administrative costs are associated with. But as far as your staff, I feel for me it's moving into the direction of the things we can control, as tough as they may be for our own jurisdictions. I mean, I know even though the city of Sacramento passed a new Measure U, that Christmas tree is leaning pretty hard to the left right now. So it's I want to make sure that, well, it could be to the right or backwards, forward, But so my point is, I think it's the decisions. I think for any jurisdiction is not easy. But the fact is, as we saw this summer, air quality is critical, and we had days where we didn't know how to respond, and what do we tell? What kind of communication with our school districts? What do we do in those situations? And it can happen in that without a fire. It can happen just on the daily commute traffic. And the last thing I would see is that unattainment results in stationary resources, which is jobs, shutting down. And if we have to tell employers to shut down because of air issue, that means that's a trickle effect on employees not going to work and all of the chain issues that happen. So for me, I want to figure out how to answer this tough question and support you in moving forward with your staff allocation on this.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate before I call the next speaker that from a committee standpoint, and anybody on the committee is on the budget committee can contradict me if they want, but these were really the three highlighted in green were really the ones that we were recommending this board direct staff to take more of a look at, because these are the revenue sources that we can control. A lot of these other ones, we need somebody else to play nice in the sand. We need the legislature to change policies or to do something, or we need SACOG or STA or somebody to come up with whatever Measure A or whatever it's going to be called the next time. But I did want to also point out, you said fires in the summer. Don't forget, the the campfire was in November, and it was affecting championship football games. My college had to go play in Reno to get their last football game into playing Sac State. And we won and got into the playoffs. Anyway, it's very important. But I think it's really critical when you see things that are happening like that, or that universities shut down for a week, and what does that do to the local economy? We're seeing a government shutdown and what that's doing to the local economy in D.C. and a lot of other things. And so, again, the work here is very critical, and there's more work than there used to be, and it's costing more. So with that, Director Daniels.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation, and it has a lot of good information. But I'm very disappointed by it, and I mean that in the perspective of this board has existed for quite some time. Other boards throughout the state, same way. The state has its efforts and all of that, and you would think that by now we're not going in the direction of needing more money and more people, that we're going in the other direction. If we've had a positive impact on air quality, why do we need to still then have more increase in budgets and staffing? So it's kind of disappointing in that respect. When I'm fully into being a regional player. The bad air doesn't stop at Citrus Heights and go around and head up to Folsom or whatever. But in being a regional partner, I pick up the thing that you've given us on the 2018 district highlights. And there's nothing there that has benefited Citrus Heights in one way, specifically and directly. And so it'd be very difficult for me to support something that says my constituents then need to pay more money to clean up air around the region. They're already paying money, as we all do. And so if we're going to be looking at what we're doing as a region, I think it's wrong to then go and ask us in these other areas that aren't seeing any of these benefits, and that would be all of us little cities for the pretty much. This is again a regional district, and it's a regional effort. But when I look at this map, I see the city of Sacramento. That's what I see is the benefactor of all of this. And again, the air doesn't stop at Citrus Heights and go back to Sacramento. But I can't support any increase that looks to ask my residents to support that. And it seems to me that we had this effort in the past where if the state was going to impose something on us, they had to figure out a way to pay for it and stuff like that. That doesn't really seem to be happening. And so I would like to hopefully see us as cities somehow come up with something on a statewide ballot that forces that stronger and see some efforts in that. But that's not this board's job. But that would be, I think, even more important than going back and finding ways to get more money from our residents. So I'm there. I think the impact or the increased cost, if you will, needs to be picked up by the people that are causing the problem. And we've done a good job in that, but I think we need to do a stronger job. And I would like to see the board maybe consider that instead, that those that are violating still, those that are causing the problem, those are the ones that we're going to pass the fees on. And then if people want to do business with those businesses, obviously those fees are going to be passed on to those people. So I'd like to see it go towards the bad guys instead of the good guys, and the good guys that are not burning when they're not supposed to be burning, the good guys that are keeping their cars clean and having to pay for their smog and all of that we've done, and instead focus on the bad guys. And then the other aspect of which has been brought up, the unintended consequences of what increasing costs due to housing, the inability to control things like fires. It just really bothers me, again, that we sit in this bowl and we pay the price, and how we don't seem to be able to come back to the state or whoever, the feds, to satisfy our standards without that being considered, in my opinion, at least not fully. We sit in a bowl. We can't do anything about it. You know, it'd be nice if we had some huge fans we could turn on and just keep blowing the air past us. But the reality of it is we pay the price for those that live to the west of us, and we pay the price for the fires that impact us. And to go back to my constituents and say, and we want you to pay more money because of those kind of things too, I just can't support that. But I do support the staffing changes. That to me is your job to figure out, and fully support that side of things.
Thank you.
So really quickly, we have some other items on here. I know we have a couple more speakers that are asking to speak, but we're going to start to lose members that need to move on. So if unless somebody objects, if it's okay, I'd like to move on to, and we'll come back to this item and finish the other comments, and if there was any public comment.
Mr. Chair, just
go ahead.
One point.
Briefly.
I think Director Daniels makes some good points, but I'd rather reframe it a little bit and have staff come back and show the benefits to jurisdictions and where some of the stationary mobile source pollution is coming from to help support their decision-making with their local city managers and colleagues.
Yeah. So without objection, if we can move to item 8 to choose chair and vice chair, and then I want to dispense of item 9 in choosing the next budget committee, and then we can come back to this, and then as people need to move on to other meetings, we can handle that. So as a point of personal privilege, I'm going to go ahead and nominate Vice Chair Guerra to be our new incoming chair. And I'd also like to make a recommendation in light of the conversations that we're having here today. One of my colleagues here that served on the school board with me that knows how difficult budgets can be. And so I'd like to nominate Director Kennedy as our next vice chair.
While I fully support Chair Guerra or Vice Chair Guerra's appointment, I'm going to have to decline. If I were to be chair after Mr. Guerra, I would no doubt become the third best chair under Mr. Ayala, Dr. Ayala. So I just don't have the time, I'm afraid, to give it what it requires. And if I can't do it 100%, I don't think I should do it.
Okay, well, I'll leave it open to additional recommendations.
We'll just do the chair first.
Sure. Well, actually, do I have a second for chair?
Second.
Okay. So let's go ahead and take that vote first. So all in favor of Vice Chair Guerra as our next chair?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would nominate Supervisor Frost for vice chair.
Do I have a second? Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, we have a chair and a vice chair. Congratulations. We had a discussion earlier, just for time purposes, I'm going to just continue to handle the meeting. And with that, we'll move.
Do the board.
Yeah, I'm going to go to that. So going on to item 9, for the standing committees. So traditionally, that would be the chair, the vice chair, which we now have a chair and a vice chair. Myself as the past chair. Is there anybody interested in serving on the budget committee in the next year? So Director Hansen has nominated himself. We do have room for one more. We have Director Harris. So with that, I'll make a formal motion to nominate the 5 of us. So with Director Harris and Director Hansen. So I have a motion. I have a motion. I have a second by, I think, Vice Chair Guerra and Director Daniels. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposition? Okay, motion carries. Thank you all. With that, we will move back to item 7 and finish our conversation about the budget. The next comments are from Director Frost.
Okay, Dr. Ayala. I just wanted to respond to some of the comments from Director Daniels, and for those of us that have been serving on the Air Quality Board for a while, it is over time that a few substantial environmental regulations have kind of been ramping up, and we're now in that final phase where it's really hitting us. And so I really appreciate the work that you folks have done to try to keep us compliant with what's expected of us. And I'm also feeling the angst and the pain at SACOG and some of us that work in some of these other boards where we're trying to figure out how we're going to meet the air quality requirements as they relate to transportation and other things. So this is really important. And the comment that I had kind of emanated from the Budget Committee discussions. I just wanted to reiterate that I too agree that the items in green are probably have the highest likelihood of us being able to control. But respectfully, I don't know if we've had that conversation with the jurisdictions, but making sure they're in the conversation and maybe thinking in terms of ramping up those increases in a way that makes it more palatable, because I know at the county we're getting hit from a lot of different places. You know, JPAs want to increase our membership dues, and costs with jails, and you know, everything is going up, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to meet those demands as well. So I think that was a comment that was brought up by Supervisor Natoli in our Budget Committee, and I thought it was worth just making sure it's at the forefront of our mind. And I also wanted to just briefly ask you to make sure I understood you said in your report, you talked about the Sacramento Air District Employees Association, how they had provided a solution with the unfunded. So I wanted to ask a question on funded versus unfunded versus no positions. So having unfunded positions, am I to understand that just gives you the flexibility to bring them in because you're not really sure where you're going to need them, and also to maybe even apply for funding with grants and other things because those positions are there? Is that why you want the unfunded versus just reducing the number of positions, or?
I'm going to give you the short version, and then Ms. Moens is going to elaborate and give you more detail. But basically, making classification, purely an administrative adjustment, taking classifications from funded to unfunded will then allow us to take those unfunded and make them provisional appointments. And this is one of the things that the Budget Subcommittee was interested in, the fact that we don't want to commit to permanent positions until we figure out some of these budget solutions.
So a provisional is a temporary position. It's not a full position with benefits. It can't work into that until it becomes
perhaps
a
Ms.
funded
Moons
position.
Can add.
Good morning. Jamil Moons, Administrative Services Manager. Director Frost, yes, what we are asking to do right now under current policy, we are allowed to hire provisionally in unfunded positions. That's the technical language in our budget documents.
Is that like a temporary?
It is. It's like a temporary. However, these employees are benefit qualified. They will come on. We will train them. They will be employees just like all of our other employees. And as we secure additional funding, the hope, the forecast is that those positions would then convert to regular status positions, and longer term they would be part of our organization. However, if for some reason the funding doesn't manifest itself, we have more flexibility to release those employees because now they're not at the regular status. There are some other things. In the meantime, we are continuing to have conversations with our Employees Association to find a better longer-term solution, and I would anticipate very much that when we come back in the budget process, we will present this in a little bit of a different light. We just need to be able to bring some people on now. As Dr. Ayala said, we are behind the curve on that with our AB 617. We have the money, we have the funding for it, we just don't have the resources on board to do the work. And so this is the technical adjustment we have to do to use existing policy, but we may very likely come back with some propose changes to that policy so that we can make maybe provisional or limited term appointments to actually funded positions. But that's our current language, and that's what we're asking to do, and we will bring back more information during the budget process on this particular item, but this solves the problem for the near term so we can bring some folks on board.
So you basically, and the conversation with the employee association was you couldn't just do that without having that conversation. They needed to agree to that different category.
No, actually, this category exists. We have it. We're moving forward with existing.
Oh, okay.
What it is it's the current provisional is limited to the unfunded status and to 1 year. We were initially having conversations with them to say, well, we also have another appointment type called limited term. And so we're just trying to work out with them, do we go limited term or do we change the definition of provisional? But right now they did not need to concur with anything. This is existing authority that we're asking to move forward with. Meanwhile, for a better longer term solution, we're having conversations with them to see what makes most sense for the organization and our employees.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? So did you get the direction you're hoping for?
I did. You need to take action on the resolution.
I'd move staff recommendation.
So this is to move the staff recommendation on the staffing positions.
Right, and then to...
So I have a motion by Natoli and a second by Harris, if I got that right. Just want to make sure, right? Okay.
I always want to clarify the motion. It's on the staffing, but it's also then to, I think the direction was asked for to more fully develop the discussion around the items that were in green here, I believe, and budget framework. So I'm prepared to, that was a part of the motion as well.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. So with that, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposition? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries, and you have the direction that you need, I believe, on the budget for now. Thank you very much. So if we can move back to item 9, I was reminded that I missed the second half of that item, which was confirming the chair's appointments to the board, appointment of board members to serve on the hearing board nomination committee. So I need to pick people now, if I'm reminding myself of what this item was from last week.
Technically, it would be the new chair. It's a little confusing.
Go ahead.
We were trying to, I was trying to wait as long as I could, man.
Go ahead.
But yeah, okay, so we'll go ahead and take item 9 again, selection and appointments of 2 board members to the position, which is I think it's historically being the chair, the vice chair?
That's the second item. That's the budget. The second.
The budget. Okay, and the hearing committee. Okay, yeah, right, the hearing committee, hearing board, okay, here we go.
It's a good start, Chair.
Exactly, yeah, here we go. I was waiting for the last one. Here we go. Okay. So, do we have nominations?
The chair generally
Okay.
asks for volunteers.
Is there any volunteers who want to be on the hearing board?
Maybe Kathy, for the new members, you want to explain what the hearing committee is and who's on it now?
Yeah.
We have a hearing board at the district.
I think your mic's not on. Yeah.
We have a hearing board at the district that hears appeals on permits. So if there's a permit decision, they got a condition or didn't get a condition that they think they needed, they can appeal that to the hearing board. If they need relief, if they can't meet any of their permit obligations or any of the regulations, something's going wrong at their facility and they need relief from penalties for a period of time, the hearing board can grant a variance to different businesses and they have to make different findings before they do it. They can issue abatement orders if the staff brings a petition for an order of abatement. If a facility is not complying with requirements, not working towards compliance, is creating, the most typical thing is an odor nuisance, we'll bring a petition for an abatement order and the hearing board can issue those orders. It's a 5-member committee. They have a legal member, a medical member, 2 public members, and an engineer. This, I believe, is to the attorney position. And the terms come up every 3 years. I think we have 2 more hearing board members that are going to be coming up for appointment in the next year or 2 before you. So the hearing board committee selects the hearing board members.
Correct. And so we had 2 members of the board that are the hearing board committee. And we're asking for volunteers. And I'm actually going to request, because I know we've been a little city of Sacramento centric here, and I'll ask our good mayor in Elk Grove to see if he'll be on the hearing board, and also Let's see. No, Sue's like, Mr. Gaylor will.
Well, I think chair and vice chair are already on it, correct? No?
Usually it's the chair and 2 members.
Oh, 2 members. Okay, I'm sorry.
Chair and 2 members, yeah. So, and Mr. Board Member Gaylord over here as well. Is that, do you guys accept that nomination?
I'll do whatever you ask me.
Well, then, I've got a list here. Yeah. Okay, good. So I'll make that motion. Is there a second for that nomination?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, welcome aboard, guys. Okay, and then since we passed the gavel over now, we're now at are we at APCO report?
We're at item number 10.
Item 10, here we go. Oh, district highlights, yes, here we go.
I do have an overhead.
It's already up there, Jamie.
Chair Guerra, directors, my name is Jamie Arno. I'm the communications supervisor at the Air District. And today I'm just briefly going to highlight some of the accomplishments that happened throughout the Air District in 2018. Our Transportation and Climate Change Division was very, very active. The Mobile Source section secured funding to provide incentives to get polluting heavy-duty trucks, buses, and ag equipment replaced with newer emission vehicles. $7 million in incentives went out the door, reducing approximately 11 tons of NOx annually. Our car share program continues to thrive. Many of you were at the kickoff a year and a half ago at Alder Grove. In 2018, we were successful in securing an additional $2 million to expand that program. What that means is this: we're going to be able to go into 4 more low-income housing communities and place 8 more cars there. That will be providing zero-emission mobility to residents that normally would not be able to take advantage of it. Our land use section, they assisted in developing the transit-oriented development ordinance from the City of Sacramento, which means that smart growth practices will happen around light rail stations, the 23 of them. The big headline, or one of the big headlines of 2018 was 617. As you know, Sacramento, the South Sac Florin area, was designated and by CARB to be one of 10, only 10 communities throughout the state to be a 617 community. One of the things that we've done that's mandated by CARB is to collect a steering committee. And actually, we're having our second meeting tonight. Those are representatives from the community that are going to help us do 3 things. They're going to help us identify and reduce local air pollution impacts. They're going to help steer us to invest state dollars to improve air quality, and also assist us in deploying a community-scale monitoring program. We are a leader in promoting greenhouse gas reductions. We have been very active with the Mayor's Commission for Climate Change. In fact, Dr. Ayala is a commissioner, along with probably some of you, and other community leaders, with the goal of getting to carbon zero by 2045. We also continue to push lower carbon emissions from development. And now if I could just have you turn over your sheet.
If you click it, Jimmy, click the clicker.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Sorry for the interruption. Our Administrative Services Division has been very active behind the scenes implementing new programs and priorities. We launched the New World financial system. What that does, New World, is it provides robust budgeting, faster payments for vendors, estimates program and project costing, and it's enhanced management reporting. So a lot of behind the scenes things that really improve customer service. We've leased the unoccupied space on the second floor, which maximizes building revenue. And we've continued the implementation of our IS master plan. That plan automates several business processes with SharePoint, using the SharePoint system. It allows us to develop various web pages, such as the community air protection page in-house. And it builds the foundation for us to move eventually to Office 365. It also developed an online reporting system to track projects internally. A lot of what the public sees has to do with our core programs, and what comes to mind to the public are responding to complaints and also processing permit applications. In 2018, we responded to over 1,000 air quality complaints, and we processed around 400 air quality permits with no backlog. We also launched a new online air quality complaint system. We continue to generate and analyze data to direct our policy. In 2018, we finalized the Community Toxics Report from wood smoke. And Director Carr, who isn't here, he actually volunteered to put an air monitoring station in his backyard while we did the study. And the goal of the study was three things: measuring the concentrations of hazardous air pollutants in certain communities, figuring out how much wood smoke played a part in those hazardous air pollutants, and then to show if disadvantaged communities are disproportionately affected by wood smoke. With staff recommendations, the board also adopted two rules. One was Rule 419, NOx from miscellaneous combustion units, and the other one was Rule 468, surface coating of plastic parts and products. Our enforcement division streamlined the exemption check before you burn process. If you have a sole source of heat waiver, you do not need to apply every year now. It's automatically renewed. Also, we proactively are sending out applications for exemptions such as low income when your exemption is expiring. Also, we are now concentrating our enforcement times for check before you burn and getting our inspectors out there at the times when people are most likely to burn. So those are just a few of the highlights from the district in 2018.
Great, thank you very much. And I do want to say, as much as that there are stuff here for the metropolitan areas, I was delighted to see the $7 million investments for the heavy-duty trucks and tractors, and particularly in those areas where, at least in the South County, are needed a lot more. Are there any questions from the board members? And if not, then thank you very much. I want to be sensitive to board members' times, and the APCO offered to skip his report. It is included in our packets, unless there is a board member that would like a report on a particular item in the APCO report. If not, then we'll go ahead and move on to board ideas and comments. Are there any board ideas and comments from the board? No. If not, are there any announcements?
No, there's not.
No announcements. With that, we're adjourned at 10:36. Thank you, everyone.